With the 2014 municipal elections, the term for council was increased to 4 years. And now that you've almost completed those 4 years, what kind of difference has it made, do you think, having the longer term?
Well, I was just on council as a councillor for 3 years, and then this is honestly, it's flown by. So I personally like the 4 years. I think that it gives you a little bit better chance to get things accomplished because, as sort of at the beginning of the last term, or at least 6 months before, people are saying, what are you going to do? Are you going to run again? What do you want to accomplish quickly before we come into the election? And there's always a bit of a downtime when people say, well, we don't want to do that right now. Maybe we should leave that for the next council. So I think having a 4-year term actually allows us to get more things done.
There have been several contentious issues over the past 4 years. Which ones have been the most difficult for you personally, as well as other council members to deal with?
Well, I think the education issue was the fact that our school was threatened with closing, caused a huge issue for all of council. And it really took a great deal of time, over about 6 months, until we had it resolved on June 30th at 4 p.m. on 2016. So that was a big issue. I'm glad that we had a wonderful support from businesses, from leaders in this town, eventually we had good support from the Liberal government. And I think they were a bit caught off guard too by the whole thing. But I think that kind of tied us all together and made this whole town work really hard to fight for something that we wanted. So that was one issue. The next issue was the census, because the census was taken on a day when we didn't have a school open. And that was a bit frightening to think that our census, our numbers were going up, we were going to be over 5,000, and all of a sudden we're losing a school. Well, that's just the death knell to this town, we all thought. So I think one of the things we did was we had lots of conversations with the RCMP and the provincial agency and the feds. We asked for a recount on the census, and funnily enough, it was originally at 5,085, and they said yes, they had made a mistake, and it was now 5,050. Okay. So that didn't make a great deal of difference to what we had to pay, but we did have conversations with the RCMP on what issues we had, why we thought this was tricky, and we ended up having them do some compromise with us so that we did not have to, we've actually added an extra person, and we didn't have to pay in the town for 6. We've actually, the regional district and the province is paying for more in the regional area, and we're eventually paying for more, but it means we have one more person. So I think that took a fair amount of work. The other issue that we had is healthcare. And we did have quite a few people come into town hall and come in to see me, and other councillors definitely have been on the hook too, because they were concerned about a lack of a primary medical doctor. I think we've worked hard with various agencies, including a committee that we have, that we applied for. Not the committee, we've applied for a grant and we got it to look at a community healthcare agency.
It's consultants.
Consultants is what we've got, yeah. They've done some work on that. They've looked at all of the issues here. And I think between that group, we haven't got anything definitive yet, between that group, between talking to IHA, several meetings with them.
Interior Health.
Yeah, with the hospital in Oliver. It's not the Oliver Hospital, it's the South Okanagan General. And with talking with doctors, pharmacists, healthcare workers, I think we're trying to work together on this. In over 18 months, a lot of sharing has happened. A lot of let's look at pain management. Let's look at that's one big thing that we dealt with on this committee. Just sharing each other's ideas. Community paramedics. And guess what? We got a community paramedic through that push. And so that's another issue. So there are three big ones that we have dealt with over the last couple of years. And I think we've listened. We have compromised when we needed to. We have worked with the agencies that can help us in a positive manner, and I think that's made the difference.
Before I move on, are there other issues that have been particularly contentious?
I don't know. Some of them not as big as those. The elm seed issue has been a big one.
Recently, yes.
And I think we've done a good job of trying to get a bit of a handle on that. We cannot go in and solve that problem, but we did get a pest detective out to some homes to advise them on what they could do. We also got hold of the Department of Highways, and I talked to them, our CAO talked to them, our operations manager, Jim, talked to them, and they came down and had a look at the trees. So all of those, I think, are positive ways that we are trying to help our constituents. So I think we're doing well.
You've touched on some of this already, but
Yes.
What do you think council's biggest successes have been over the past 4 years?
Well, I think just what I've named. I think we've discussed things well. We have had lively debate on lots of things. We don't always all agree, but we're kind of like The View. We each give our own point of view, and sometimes we have to take a vote, and we don't all agree. But that's what is good about it. I think that makes, at least it brings up all the issues. And I think that's very positive.
In hindsight, are there any issues that you think council could have handled better?
You know, there's the odd one where we get somebody coming in and saying, gee, why didn't you do it this way? And we looked at things, and guess what? We have adjusted things. I'll give you an example, is the boat trailer parking. That's a new way of doing it this year because we have a machine in there, and that's unusual because we didn't have that for the last couple of years. However, and people, I get phone calls quite often, and I know the town does too. I always park my boat in there, and then I come and pay later. And I said, well, I'm sorry, but that's not the way it works right now. You have to go and get a ticket from the machine. Otherwise, you will get a ticket from the bylaw officer. So what we have done, I understand recently, not me, but the bylaw officers and town staff, is they have allowed people who have a ticket not to have to wait till the next morning to come in and pay at town hall, but if they meet the bylaw officer there, she can allow them to sort of pay the ticket right on there, and then she can allow the boat to be released. So, you know what, that's a positive move. The other thing is that we're doing paving of 62nd Avenue, and we did hear from some of the neighbors who said, you know, this is going to go on for another month, and every time cars come around, especially at the corner there's dust everywhere. Well, so as you know, because you were at the meeting, we talked about that. We understand now that the company who has been hired to do this, H&M Excavating, has agreed to do some extra watering on there as part of their contract. So those are the little things. People say, well, you don't have a magic wand. Actually, I do, but it doesn't always work. But you know what? We try to help people, and we try to look at things. Sometimes we can't, because we can't look at totally individual issues and just go with that. We have to look at the bigger picture, and we have to try and find something that will work for everybody. But okay. I think we've been good at that.
When I talked to you in January, you highlighted two issues. One of them was healthcare, and one of them was the Aquatic Centre. You've spoken about healthcare a moment ago, but we haven't heard much on the Aquatic Centre lately.
Because we haven't, and you're quite right. It's still on the table. We need to get together with not only the Osoyoos Indian Band, but the town of Oliver, Area A, Area C, And we did apply for a grant to do a kind of a study on this, and we didn't get it. And so we're kind of backtracking a bit and having a look at how we can work together and get this accomplished. But it always amazes me how long these things take, and especially in the summertime when so many people are on holiday, things quieten down quite a bit. So, and then people say, well, you probably won't get it done in September because you've got the election. Well, no, it's business as usual. We have things that we have to deal with, and we will continue to do that.
Okay. Is the OIB on track to work with you on this?
They are. They have some other issues that they're trying to accomplish as well, and it's so I can't discuss that in detail, but it's going to take some negotiating and it's going to take some time to get this done. So, and it's not necessarily an aquatic center; it's a study to look at. Can we put it somewhere? Can we share it? Where can we put it? And how much will it will cost? So there's a lot of steps before we ever get to that stage.
Okay, I'm going to just throw out a couple of names of a few key issues that we've seen over the past 4 years or recently. And I'd like you to give me just a very short answer, response, your impressions, comments.
Okay.
First issue is the Osoyoos Airport.
You know, I think people are assuming because of the group, the airport group coming to council a couple of weeks ago, that the airport is actually going ahead and expanding and so on. That is not the case yet. This is just a study that the airport committee did to look at what are the issues, how might they be accomplished, what would be the costs of those. So, you know, I'm not sure where the airport is going. We've talked about this for quite a long time. We do have several other airports around, and I'm not sure this is going to go ahead quickly. But you know what? The group that is very keen on this is looking at putting in fencing and lights and tie downs and doing some further planning. And I think that's a positive step.
Okay, marijuana retailing.
Well, there's an article in the paper today in the province about, marijuana things. It's such a confusing issue. There's the feds, there's the province, there's municipalities, there's marijuana operations, there, facilities to grow them, there's stores, and every province is doing something a little bit different. You know, we're going to take things slowly. We're looking at all of the issues. We have some good advice from our staff, and we don't have to have everything open and up and running on the 17th of October if we're not ready. We're not going to do like some communities have, where they've allowed marijuana operations to set up shop, and now they're having to rethink that and get them out and find them, and we don't want that to happen. We want to do it carefully, but we are quite adamant that we want it to be a private business. And that's because we think if somebody wants to come forth and set up a good business plan, be willing to pay the licensing fee, be willing to follow with all of the rules and the regulations for zoning and so on that we have and bylaws, and they're willing to do that, we think they'll be successful. We don't want people coming in saying, oh yeah, I'm going to set up today and be really quick, and we want it to be thoughtful, like any business. And so we're not there yet, but we do have a report from our planning director on the August the 20th meeting, and we will certainly look at the areas that we can fit in a possible business, where it should go. And I know we've had people say, well, who cares if it's close to schools or parks? Well, those are some of the issues that we think are kind of important to look at. And we always like to not make rash decisions, but as CJ calls it, sober second thought. Sometimes we think, this sounds good. Hang on, let's stop for a minute and look at this again. And sometimes other things come to light that affect our decision.
Okay, policing and crime. We spoke about the policing funding formula, but what about the more broad issue of policing and crime?
Well, we have a very good relationship with Sergeant Beta and the police in town. We work well with them, and I think they're doing a good job. We know that people are concerned about crime, but as Ted Dieger, Superintendent Dieger from Penticton said, there are two things that you can do that will cut way down on our ability to deal with things, and it will help you. One is that you should lock your vehicle, lock your house. Do not just leave the engine running with the keys in to run into the store to get a quart of milk. I mean, that's not sensible, because there are people who will look at that and take the opportunity to do something. Do not leave things with the windows rolled down on your front seat. It's an invitation to have somebody break in, even if it is locked. But he comes to the regional district quite often, Ted Dieger, to talk to all of us. And he said that is a huge, huge issue. Locking your vehicle, locking your house, being aware. The other one is, oftentimes they will get stolen bikes, stolen quads, that type of thing. They have no idea who to return them to, because people did not write down the serial numbers. And if you do that and keep that, then they can help you return things. Those two things, according to him, are big issues that people should be aware of. Now, there is a crime, an RCMP crime concern group in Oliver on the 28th of this month, and I'm going to attend, as well as other mayors and municipal directors and that type of thing. I'm not sure exactly what's going to come out of that, but you know what? Having the conversation, bringing up issues, and maybe suggestions on what we can do to work together, those are all positive.
And affordable housing.
That's a huge issue, isn't it? Our affordable housing, which has been changed to near market housing over behind the new fire hall, I mean, those houses are very nice. We've been in a couple of them. They're selling. They're not quite as low in terms of price as originally thought. So that's why we have adjusted our affordable housing, near market housing committee and our rules and regulations, because we thought this isn't working to have a 20-year, you have to sign up to pay for 20 years. We've moved it down to 5, and we think that that will help a number of people, and that where you can sell it, where you get. So I think that we're listening to people, and we're working to try and adjust things when needed.
Tourism.
Tourism is the mainstay of our town, quite frankly. Tourism and our fruit and vegetables and grapes. So it's a huge, huge positive thing. I mean, we're known as a tourism mecca. And how many people do we run into on the streets that say, "Oh, I came to Osoyoos when I was with my parents and my grandparents and as a kid, and I always come back and camp here." Now, that's not quite as easy as it was way back, but I think because of our lake, because of our climate, because of our amenities around here, and we're Canada's warmest welcome, and that's not just the weather. That's our residents who have a warm welcome for everybody.
Rural schools. Keeping schools open.
Well, I think it's absolutely essential that we have a school in a community, especially of this size. I think that there's many places around the country that are dealing with, having less students and smaller classes, which means that it costs more to hire teachers and run a school. But it's almost like an essential service, I think. I don't think you can have a town of this size without schools in it. So it's a no-brainer for me. We would fight again if it was necessary.
Okay, and what will be the biggest challenges the next council faces over the next 4 years?
Well, I think it's partly that things change radically from day to day, year to year. Climate change and wildfires and floods. Flooding this year and last year were two huge issues that have our staff and everybody that works here dealing with them very well, and trying to get a handle on things and work with emergency operations. We've just, at the regional district, we just okayed renting a space that we had rented for emergency operations. Well, we've decided that we probably need it for longer than a month a year, so it's going to be rented and used for other things on a yearly basis rather than just renting it. It's because, I mean, how many months were the emergency operations dealing with floods? Calms down a little bit. We're still trying to get that cleaned up. And all of a sudden now we have wildfires and threatening our group. And it's not Osoyoos that has it at this point, but our area, Carameus and Snowy Mountain, and it's the biggest fire in BC right now. So, the main thing is that it's really important to share information, to work together, to try and solve problems if you can, but we cannot solve everybody's individual problems, but we can work at it.